Welcome back to the San Diego Opera Podcast. I'm Nick Ravelis, your host. My guest today is the stage director of All Is Calm, Alan Hicks. Alan, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
Oh, this is terrific. And I want to start from the beginning because you are the first holder of a very kind of special position here at San Diego Opera. Tell us a little bit about that. I think that's really fascinating.
Well, it's a great position. I'm splitting my time between San Diego State University, where I'm the director of opera theater, and San Diego Opera, where I'm the resident assistant director and director for some productions. So,
right.
Yeah.
Which is brand new. Mm-hmm. I'm very proud to say that was an outgrowth of some of the community engagement and education programs that we did in my office, mm-hmm. and we're literally in my old office right now. Even though I'm retired, they keep bringing me back. And it was outreach to the college students who were music majors, mm-hmm. and were voice majors. Mm-hmm. Created a program for them to represent our company out in the community, and offering them master classes from main stage artists and all of that. And the faculty there started asking us, well, what about a tandem position, mm-hmm. with someone on staff who would be the opera director, right. and then somebody here doing the assistant directing work and directing, in this case, directing a full-on production for San Diego Opera. Yeah. So it's just a great thing to see that finally come to fruition. Yeah. It really is.
It's a nice position too, and it affords me the opportunity to bring the students into the professional world and invite them to rehearsals and to dress rehearsals so that they can get a total experience.
Yeah, and keeps you very, very busy.
This is very true. I just ended a production yesterday and I'm in a new one today. So.
And let's talk a little bit about that. You did Jonathan Dove's opera Flight, mm-hmm. With the San Diego State Opera program.
Right.
That's a chunk. That's a tough piece. It's a very challenging piece, mm-hmm. for the students. How did it go? You just closed yesterday, right?
Yeah, we closed yesterday. It went very, very well. The idea was to challenge them to do something that they've never done before. I wanted to do something in English. I've always loved this piece. I actually think it doesn't get done enough. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also quite timely with the discussions of the refugees and the immigration officer.
Right.
And I think that what it afforded us the opportunity to sort of train them as actors and theater people in addition to just the singing. And it was musically incredibly challenging, it was physically challenging, and they really rose to that level. And and I think it proved to them and to everyone out there that San Diego State can do this kind of work.
That they can do just about anything.
Yeah,
exactly. That is a musically and theatrically, I think, mm-hmm. that's a challenging score.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Definitely.
That's a real success. That's great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about All Is Calm.
Sure.
Just a little bit about the background of the piece itself. I know you've had some discussions with Philip Rothstein,
Peter
Rothstein, who created the piece, mm-hmm. originally for La Da Theater in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. What were those conversations like once you got the assignment to do this piece?
Well, the first thing that happened is I got the assignment and I started looking at what had been done here in the past with the Bodhi Tree concerts, and it was a different venue, and we were moving it into a bigger space. So I started to conceptualize the piece before I actually talked to Peter and before I had seen any of the archival footage from their production. And so I conceived it for the Balboa, what we were going to do, and then I spoke to him afterwards, and it was very informative and interesting because he wanted to really stay with the simplicity of the piece itself and not get too bogged down in effects and sound effects and explosions and things like that. And so when I looked at, and I did neither, but I did want to sort of expand into the space that we're doing it in. The Balboa is this wonderful old vaudeville-looking deco house, and so if people aren't interested in what they're seeing on stage, they're going to start looking around at the prettiness.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I wanted to make sure that we were keeping them actively engaged in the piece. And
Yeah.
so when I talked to him, most of our conversations were, this is how I'm going a slightly different direction, but none of it is I'm not coloring too far outside the lines. And I think he was happy to hear that, because I think he's really interested in the simplicity, and so am I. I mean,
What did you do for sets and costumes? Now, I imagine the company engaged two separate people to do the costumes and the sets.
Well,
who are they, and how did you get them going in the direction you wanted them to go?
Well, interestingly enough, we are collaborating on this piece with San Diego State University as part of my position, my dual position. So our lighting designer, Ann McMills, and our costume designer, Denitsa Blitznikova, are both faculty at SDSU, and then a scenic charge for our San Diego Opera, Tim Wallace, is our set designer. And so it's very simple, all of it's very simple, but it's still, we're trying to evoke sort of the imagery of the space, of the trenches themselves, and
Right.
no man's land.
Right.
Yeah.
I also understand that you've built the stage thrust out so that the singers will be closer to the audience.
Yes. Well, it's a heavy dialogue show. I like to think about it as a radio play that just happens to be on stage. And so there's a lot of a cappella choral music, but there's also this dialogue that is delivered. And so what we wanted to do is get the dialogue closer to the audience and out from under the proscenium, so that it could be heard under the cacophony, or under the underscoring of the choral music.
Right, right.
So we actually we pulled up the pit. There is a step off of it's about 8 inches from the proscenium down to the pit level, but we didn't take the pit completely out, which is what you would normally do with an orchestra.
Yeah.
So that the audience can be very close to the action, but so that the guys can actually get closer to the audience too.
Yeah, and obviously that's an opportunity to make the piece more intimate and hit the audience more directly.
Right.
When Bodhi Tree did it at the San Diego Veterans Museum in Balboa Park, that's a very small space.
Yes.
With a very resonant sound. Balboa Theater is, of course, a heck of a lot smaller than the Civic Theater, but it's still like 1,200 seats or something like that. So you want to make sure that it connects, right?
And we tend to think in opera that 1,200 seats is small, but when you're standing in the Balboa, it does not feel small, and it does not feel. Some of the more intimate Broadway houses even feel smaller than that space.
Right.
So I don't want people who are sitting in the balcony to feel like they're so disconnected, but also just practically speaking, we're not miking this show. So we're doing a little bit of area boost, but they're not wearing individual mics. So we have to get them closer to the audience, but we also have to teach them how to speak in such a way that it will hit the back wall.
Yeah. I just sat in on a music rehearsal upstairs here at the opera office, and it was interesting hearing the dialogue coach, Vanessa Dinning, working with Juan Carlos, who's of course the conductor and who I interviewed last week, getting the Cockney accent right. It's one thing to have one actor or singer doing a Cockney accent. It's quite another to have 16 men singing that way.
Right. And you also have to remember that Vanessa had told me at some point there are 19 different accents in the piece, but almost everyone has to do several different accents, because, as you said, it's all 16 doing that Cockney, but some of their lines are German accents, and then sometimes we're doing a French accent, and sometimes we're doing several different British accents.
Yeah.
So even though there's 19 accents and one person's assignments might be all standard British, they still have to sing in Cockney or in German or in French.
Makes it a really challenging show.
Very much so.
And you were talking about the other day, 125 for assignments? What do you mean by that? I want the audience to realize that even though this piece comes off as being somewhat simple, it's not.
Oh, it's not at all. It's the interesting thing about this piece is it was written for a certain amount of singers and a certain amount of actors, and the actors all split up the lines, and then the singers all split up the solos. So the way we have contracted this particular piece is that everyone in the piece has to be equally featured. So that means one person might have a solo and a spoken line or two, and then another person might have 3 or 4 spoken lines and then a smaller solo or an ensemble piece. But if you break that down into what each person has done and then you sort of add it together, it's 120 different assignments. And I had to go through, one of the very first things I had to do was go through and figure out how are we going to split these up evenly, who is best at what, who will need work on certain things, who's never done anything like this, and who will have to spend time on. And the first document that I sent to the opera company was, this is how we're going to split this all up. And Juan Carlos and I sat down. He had told me who he thinks the best soloists are and the best ensembles are and how to split those up. And then I went to the dialogue and separated them out. And then I sent this massive 8 or 9 page document to the administration and said, okay, here it is.
I can't imagine. But that shows you, I think, just a little bit of the complexity of what goes into making opera happen.
Yeah.
Even on a small scale,
Right.
like we do in the Detour series.
Right.
Well, I am so excited about this piece. I can't wait for opening, and best of luck in rehearsals.
Thank you.
I'm very excited.
This is wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thanks.